So there's a lot more to the theory. In fact, it's predicated a little bit. There's a funny video out there of a science experiment where people dressed in white T-shirts and black T-shirts are passing a basketball, and they ask you to count the number of times that people
this
in the white
gorilla
T-shirt.
Thing, right?
Yeah. And what most people don't see, and we're giving away the example, we're kind of telling the end of the story a little bit, but you're right, they don't see the gorilla appear on the screen. That's what your ads are to a Dunkin' person if you're Starbucks.
Hi, I'm your host, Matt Egol, for CX and Culture Connection, the show for CX leaders who are looking to drive growth and innovation through the connection of customer experience and culture. Excited to be here today with Greg Stuart, who's the CEO of MMA Global, and we're going to talk about the broadening view of marketing leaders and how customer experience fits into all the awesome work that marketing leaders like CMOs and CDOs and chief experience officers and other leaders are doing that weaves customer experience into the new playbook for how you build brands and grow enterprise value. I'm particularly excited to have Greg here, who's been a leader in the marketing and media ecosystem because of his role in helping drive partnership of MMA Global with member companies to fuel growth and drive tangible enterprise value. Greg, thanks for joining today.
Yeah, you bet, Matt. Excited to be here. Always happy to talk to you. Although I got to say, I'm a little bit chagrined. I mean, I see you as the expert, so I don't know why I'm allegedly the guest expert of some kind. So, but whatever. I don't know. Well, I'll do my best to help out.
We'll have fun with it today, and I'm excited to team with you and the other folks in MMA Global as a CX subject expert to help drive further depth in the customer experience space for your audience.
100% agree. It's a big area and super undeveloped, and I think it's going to reset a lot of marketers' world pretty dramatically. So,
well, Greg, just to get us going, could you tell us a little bit more about MMA Global and where you see its role in the media and marketing ecosystem?
Yeah, let me give some background for your listeners in case they're not really familiar. So we are a nonprofit trade association. Our focus is on servicing chief marketing officers. We also have a chief digital officer board, so we bridge both those digital transformational kind of orientations of the world. But listen, the mission, I'll give you two mission statements actually, Matt. I'll give you one, I'll give you my snarky mission statement. The real mission statement is that we're here to architect a new future of marketing. Listen, there's so much change going on there. It's almost impossible for anybody to keep up or to really even orient. And I'm not even really sure we have the best of tools to do what we're trying to do now. So that's just, like we weren't great already, and then the whole world shifted again. And will continue to shift, especially now with AI. Okay. My snarky-ish mission statement, and I hope none of my board members hear this, is that we're here to save marketing from marketers. And again, that is meant to be sort of more funny than anything, but it really is an understanding that it's just gotten really tough. And we don't have the underlying frameworks, thinking, thought leadership, and as you know, we operate under a think tank strategy. So we're always trying to come up with new, innovative things that literally will move the stock price of the company. So that's the MMA. And by the way, we operate 15 countries around the world. We've got 800 total corporate members. And the team of the MMA is around 100 people right now. So, we're like a real legit trade association trying to do our best to help.
And MMA Global's got a bunch of think tanks that you mentioned, and I'm particularly a fan of the MAT think tank, the Marketing Attribution think tank.
Yeah. No, I love Matt. It's really one of our favorite ones. In fact, those who are involved with us, I think our net promoter score for those involved with Matt is 4 times higher than some variation of that. It's significantly higher than if you're just a member of the MMA. So yes, we've done a lot of good work in marketing attribution. Yep.
And there's also the MOST, for marketing organization, and the data think tank, and a lot of the stuff that we're doing in customer experience together cuts across the think tanks, but a lot of it is coming out under the data think tank, given the importance of data and analytics for driving a great customer experience.
100%. And Matt, you raised, if I can say even just about the what we call the MOST think tank, it's called Marketing Org Strategy Think Tank is its actual sort of name. But it was within that think tank. We've been working on a rethink of marketing org, trying to focus on marketing org that focuses on performance, not politics. And if anybody's been a part of a marketing org, then they know exactly what I meant by that comment. And it seems to be in that research we've been doing for 5, almost 6 years now, with a team of academics, that customer experience is probably the number one marketing strategy. So companies that are performing really well have a very strong customer experience orientation. It used to be brand. It used to be the Procter & Gamble way, and it used to be around purpose. But that's no longer the thesis. It's now going to be driven by data and how we actually personalize and create a positive customer experience. And I hear that again and again from the board members. And we'd like to do more research to even validate, but it seems directionally that's what our research seems to show right now.
I'm particularly excited about how the internet and digital have helped evolve the practice of marketing over time to allow much more focus on building experiences in addition to buying advertising. It's a both and how there's a lot of value both in the near term, but also in the long term of all the cumulative impact of the experiences that you're creating that shape the brand and deliver value. At MMA Global, you've done a lot of research about brand performance and about the long-term impact of marketing investments. Can you share a little bit more about some of the recent insights and where you see that headed?
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And by the way, Matt, I think that I think it's one of two of the most important research projects I'll have been involved with in my entire career. So just for the listeners, what Matt's referring to is that the MMA started out actually pre-pandemic, and then we paused it during the pandemic for a bunch of obvious reasons, to do research against the value of brand as performance. And what we were kind of looking at is this tension that exists between brand versus performance. So I don't really want to pit things. I think it's the combination that marketers need to look at, sort of obviously. Okay, but we heard the question come up. What's funny about that, and so if you take a moment to take a step back, for marketing's brand and the value of brand and brand attitude, brand perspective, is the most important thing we have to accomplish. It's really been the thesis of all marketing for over 100 years. And yet, it's the thing that we knew the least about. And we could never articulate to the CFO what the value of brand was going to be. There was no way that the CFO could understand that as a vehicle that she or he would invest into. Insane. We didn't know that. Where that's really problematic is there is no, when we heard this issue from the CMOs, we took a step back, went out and scanned the marketplace. And listen, I've talked to 200 CMOs about this at this point, so I'm very clear. There is no off-the-shelf research methodology to understand brand measured as performance over time. Doesn't exist. Nobody had tried to do it. Now, having pulled it off, I know why they didn't try. But it's still, I think, it's neglect on the part of the marketing industry that we never figured that out. Okay, so MMA, when we heard this issue, we took a step back and said, well, that's a math problem. It's not a cold fusion, go to Mars problem. We need new science on this. We just have to come up with a methodology to solve that and do data collection. So we built a methodology. We spent about a year sort of perfecting that. We talked to everybody, from Google to Facebook to dozens of marketers and CMOs and analytics experts. We went through everybody. And so we created a methodology. We still weren't sure it was going to work. We went and raised $2 million, and we are now in field with 3 brands on this research: Ally, Kroger's, and Campbell's. And there's a chance the 4th marketer is not signed. It's also going to get involved in it. And we are trying to do the substantive work to understand the value of brand in a way that you could choose to invest. And I don't know, Matt, do you want data on that now, or you just want the readers to know that that's the kind of work that the MMA is doing?
I think that's a good starting off point, and I would encourage the listeners to check out more of what MMA Global is sharing on its website and events, and also maybe you want to share a little bit about your podcast, Greg, and the discussions you're having with CMOs, and because that's another place people can go to get more information on this. Yeah, and listen, just to kind of close that loop then for people, you're right. The brand is performance research, although, like I said, we've been working on it for 4 years. It was paused during the pandemic. We literally 3 months ago got the first wave of results for Ally. And I think there's a meeting on Friday night. Why it's Friday night, I'm not sure. Sounds very cloak and dagger to me. But we're also going to see the results for Kroger's for the first time. And so all of that will be featured at MMA CMO Summit that's coming up on July 23rd, 25th. That's invite only, but if you write me and if you're special enough, we'll try to get you an invite to it. I think it might be sold out, but let me know. There's always cancellations, and we have a wait list. So it also gets featured with an Apostle event. But if you just want to know more about that research as a marketer, we'd be happy
to kind of take you through it at any point that somebody wants. And you're right, I do talk a little bit about, you sort of referenced there, so I'll just mention so it's not, the readers aren't wondering like what was Matt talking about. I do have a podcast that I've started now that I'm featuring CMOs. In fact, I think we just went live today with Diana Hosling from Colgate. The podcast is called Building Better CMOs. It's kind of a little bit of arrogance in that statement I don't like, but it's really like an understanding that, hey, we can be better. We can understand. There's elements of our business that we either don't know, don't have data on, or there's some things that some people believe to be true, we might get into today, that just simply aren't true. And we're trying to really help make marketers and CMOs, in essence, better. And so the podcast is one approach to that. And I'm interviewing CMOs as a part of that. Yep.
One of the things you talked about a moment ago, Greg, is to manage both and. That brand as performance is both upper funnel and brand love and lower funnel and driving sales and driving enterprise value through kind of growth and profit. And I've always been drawn to this both and nature of marketing, the creativity and analytics, marketing and sales. A lot of times when people ask, is e-commerce something that marketing or sales owns? The answer is yes. It's both, right? Or is shopper marketing something that marketing or sales owns? The answer is yes. Because the collaboration is important. And while kidding aside, marketing has a leadership role to play in a lot of these areas because of the importance of creativity and driving growth and driving the brand. It is a team sport.
We like to say, Matt, CMOs are no longer managing a function, they're managing a coalition. And we know from the research we've done that 38% of marketing capabilities sit outside the domain of the CMO. The CMO doesn't own 38% of marketing capabilities today. That's a little nutty. I mean, things have really changed.
Yeah, and when you look at all the new exciting areas that are being invested and powered by data, they also require great creativity. So it's not one or the other. It's actually the combination of the two.
100%. I think the greatest. I used to do a big talk back when I had written a book around this, when we were creating multi-touch attribution, 20 some odd years ago, that the single greatest investment you could make was in better creative, because it had such an exponential effect against sort of the marketing spend that you were doing. But then hopefully once we get that right, then there's a whole bunch of other techniques and tactics. It's another thing you mentioned, though, about this. One of the things we learned from both the brand as performance work, and then we saw it show up in a series of multi-touch attribution studies we did 6-7 years ago about the modern marketing mix. If a marketer would ask us today, like, oh, well, what's the best mix of marketing? What's the right mix of marketing? And go, it depends. If you have upper funnel, the mix is very different for optimal performance than lower funnel. And I gotta be honest with you, man, I don't even know what we do about that. Like, how do you rethink? I mean, most brands are trying to do it all, which is obviously never a good strategy. But I don't know how you then really, unless you have really clear definition on the campaign, how are you optimizing that media mix for maximum performance, given that there's sometimes this confusion between, upper funnel, lower funnel dynamics? I don't know. It seems, I don't know how we reconcile that one yet.
It's a moving target, and we things keep evolving. Like, I remember when I started in the media practice more than 25 years ago. I started early on in the media side and moved over to the retail and consumer and other industries on the experience side. That we often talked about integrated marketing, and the definition of integrated marketing has evolved at least 10 times over my career.
I don't know if there is a definition for it, really. I mean, I guess you're right. We all say it. I don't know if we all know what it is, except that somehow we've thought that there's something else going on and not just one thing, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, but originally people talked about integrating multiple media platforms together, about bringing the inventory together of the advertising in an integrated campaign. And then people started looking about, later on, like, how do we integrate all the aspects of the marketing mix and beyond just the paid media? P&G coined the phrase shelf back, which was really about integrating the in-store with the packaging and the displays which are also creative, by the way, to what we were talking about. You know, their canvas, the display and the package are also creative opportunities, not just the media. But to integrate all these experiences, ultimately, these are experiences that you're delivering. And then Google called it the zero moment of truth, you know, to not to offend P&G, because you had when she sees the product at the shelf and when she uses it at home were the two moments of truth. But there's a moment before that, all the experiences along the path to purchase. So all these different integrated experiences are an opportunity to drive brand. And you know, that's what we're working with now. And the work that MMA is doing, that we're doing together, is an opportunity to kind of weave experience into the broader mix of things that are being done.
And I think we're just getting started on that, Matt. You know, I had a very funny experience. I won't name names on this one, but, you know, a big CMO, $1 billion budget. And I said to her about a year ago, I said, you know, I think the whole mission of the MMA, so listen, I'm architecting a new future of marketing, right? That's the mission statement of this thing. I said to her, I says, I think that my job is to take all those brand-trained CMOs, because almost every CMO who got to the job got there through brand. Procter & Gamble, Unilever, blah, blah, blah. And I go, I think our job is to take all those brand CMOs and turn them into customer experience CMOs. And she didn't even hesitate. And she goes, that's my journey. Now I got to figure out how to spend $1 billion doing that.
Yeah. By the way, there's a play on words in my company's name, JourneySpark Consulting, that there's actually multiple journeys. Yes. There's the journey of the customer, but then the company is on a journey to be more customer driven. Yes. And the leaders and managers and employees of a company are on a journey to be more customer driven. So we're all on a journey together, and we want to spark innovation on the journeys. One of the things that I find really fun about MMA Global are the experiments you do. You mentioned the brand performance. There have been others that are being done with members in return on omni-channel experience and the movable middle. Do you want to talk a little bit more about some of the insights that come out of some of the other experiments that marketing leaders are doing with each other and with the MMA Global?
I think if you think of MMA a little bit as an innovation think tank, you kind of get the idea. And maybe even a venture capital approach to looking for new thinking, new ideas, stuff that has never been done before, but it's also got to have the power to potentially move the stock price of the company if fully executed. Now, by the way, I don't want to underestimate how hard it is for a big corporation to fully execute anything new across all of its brands or channels or efforts. So that's, you know, it's not a simple task, but it's got to have the potential to do that. So one thing you mentioned is the movable middles growth framework. So we did a series a couple of years ago called The Great Debates, Marketing Growth Frameworks, I think was the full title of the thing. And it's still available on our website. And we basically asked the leading providers of growth frameworks today, Pete Fader from Wharton, Les Binet, Peter Field, with the long and short of it, Byron Sharp, who wrote a book called How Brands Grow, Mark Hansen, a UCLA professor. He had done a bunch of work in this area, and we had a few others. And it was in the process of looking at the variety of different growth frameworks. By the way, I'm not even sure all marketers are fully clear that there are detailed, validated, hopefully, growth frameworks out there. Like that should be the underlying foundation. It's like a schematic to how you need to start then to do marketing. And it's in particular advertising. I'm not sure everybody even knows that they're there. Okay, so that's a bit of fail in marketing what we're doing. That's why we did this series. We want to make sure marketers had something. Okay. It was in the process of doing that, and I won't say which one, but that we realized that there were some questions about one of those growth frameworks, and whether or not it had been fully validated. Now, the MMA is not the type to go out and pick on other people's stuff publicly. We don't do that. What we do, though, is we have to say, well, then what's the alternative? Is there a better answer? And it was in that process that we got to now what we call movable middles growth framework. It was originally called Outcomes-Based Marketing 2.0, but that was a complicated name, so we changed it. And the basic thesis of that is that consumers have different responsiveness to creative to messages. And what's funny about that, Matt, is not all marketers agree with that thesis. Okay, some question that. But the idea, and the best example, let me just give an example because it makes it come real, is Starbucks versus Dunkin'. Okay? There's not often a lot of crossover between those two brands. They represent totally different things. But the thesis of Movable Middle's growth framework is that those who have some propensity to consider Dunkin' will see the ads and react to them, or hopefully then go buy at some point. Okay. And the same for Starbucks. But if you're a Starbucks committee, like you really like Starbucks, you don't even see the Dunkin' ads. They mean absolutely nothing. They don't register in the brain. They mean nothing. Okay? And so what you're really arguing for is that if you're going to build volume and growth, that you concentrate your spend. Now, what most people, and obviously it's concentrating on spend and movable middles, and there's a lot of science behind how you do segmentation work. But the idea is that if you take spend that's going to go to, if you were Starbucks, for example, and you were going to spend against those who have a low propensity to buy Starbucks, but they're a heavy Dunkin' user, for example, right? It's so costly to create change, it's never going to really happen at any level. And movable middles tend to be very small. The largest movable middle segmentation I've seen was for Tide, which is a massive controlling brand here in America, but its movable middles is only 42%. So there's a lot more to the theory. In fact, it's predicated a little bit. There's a funny video out there of a science experiment where people dressed in white T-shirts and black T-shirts are passing a basketball, and they ask you to count the number of times that people
this
in
is
the white
gorilla
T-shirt.
Thing, right?
Yeah. And what most people don't see, and we're giving away the example, we're kind of telling the story a little bit, but you're right, they don't see the gorilla appear on the screen. That's what your ads are to a Dunkin' person if you're Starbucks. So there's no point to put the spend there. It's a concentrated spend. And here's the whole punchline. The whole punchline is that of the experiments we have done so far, which have been now somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 10 of them, I think, with different brands, we have seen increases of campaign performance level increases across the whole of the campaign, plus 50% to plus 100%. I mean, that's money in the bank. You're not spending any more money. It's just a new targeting strategy. And
you're
so
creating a lot more science and validity behind some concepts that people have intuitively grappled with and known.
Yes.
That if you have a more endemic advertising like environment, people pay more attention and you have more engagement. The same thing's true of a brand. If people have some propensity already to engage with it, they don't tune it out. They pay attention. If they have zero propensity, it's as if the ad's not there. But the other thing that's really important is if you're very loyal already,
you don't
it's
need to
wasted
advertise
spend.
to those people. Exactly. Yeah. And by the way, that's very controversial. A lot of CMOs on the board still really struggle with that. By the way, this came from Norm DeGrav at the CMO of CVS, who pulled us aside about 3-4 years ago and said, my team is telling me this. I'm not sure it's right, and it's what led us to develop the growth framework. It's very interesting work. And listen, my offer is to any big marketer here who's listening, if they want to execute a study with us, reach out. We'll just do it with you. We're trying to capture more information.
I don't think we're saying a truly binary thing that there's zero value of investing in a loyal customer. We're talking about relative value, the ROI. And so if you have a high replenishment brand, like that has, like beauty or personal care or cleaning supplies, there's a lot of replenishment purchases. There's still value in advertising to remind people and reinforce it, but the ROI will be higher in the movable middle than at the people who are very loyal.
The ROI is higher. So why? And by the way, the ROI is higher by 5x. 10x, like it's crazy. So the thesis of movable middles pushed to the far reaches is that you would not advertise to loyalists at all. And those who are repetitive buyers, they're going to buy you every time. Especially like I like your idea too about replenishment. I don't see more ads for Bounty and go buy more Bounty. I just buy Bounty as I need Bounty, for example. Right. Yeah, no, it's a very interesting thesis, and but it's a good example. I mean, here we started here. It's a good example of the kind of research that MMA tries to do to bring clarity for all marketers to make ultimately, CMOs and marketers better.
Let's connect this back to customer experience a little bit more, because we talked earlier about the upper funnel and lower funnel and the value of thinking of both and across the full marketing mix. You were talking a moment ago about propensity. I want to unpack this a little bit and connect it back to CX. What a lot of people, when they hear movable middle, what they're probably thinking of is net promoter. Is this a promoter? Is this a detractor? This isn't the same thing, although it's complementary. A promoter analysis and you can come up with personas and ways of segmenting your audience around that and develop insights to target people. But the way you're measuring propensity is not just with a single number. You're actually coming up with a number of metrics to come up with what is the propensity of someone to engage with the brand, not just to recommend it. They're both useful scores. And then what we can do is start developing insights into what drives propensity. Who is actually, what is this movable middle? What are the experiences? What are the peaks and valleys? I think this is a very powerful framework to extend beyond paid media into other areas. And I'm looking forward to seeing how we can take this forward together. It's a great team working on it, and there's a lot of opportunity to extend this from paid media into the broader set of experiences.
100%. And I think, listen, I know where you're kind of going on this, is the work around personalization. And now that we have, better, greater channels to do that. You're right. Movable Middles has its roots in a more, not in the full world of mass media. Back when digital was probably 50% of spend, it's now sort of increased so we have even more ability. And his thesis still, but we got to take those theories into other opportunities to connect with consumers. And like you said, be more personalized. Absolutely.
In the CX study that we've got in the field now that we've been doing that is about CX capability maturity and how companies can invest in customer experience to drive growth and enterprise value. We've had participants in waves where we've been able to share the results back with them. And what's interesting is in a lot of those conversations, when we bring up this movable middle concept, it really resonates with them. And they're really interested in this idea of how do I actually connect my CX insights to this concept of the movable middle, so that when we build personas, when we build journeys, we actually think about who the movable middle is for our brands. Yeah, so I think that there's a lot of interesting things that we could explore there. And I would say to the audience, if you're interested in learning more about the study that we're doing in MMA Global on CX, reach out to me and we'll see if there's a way that if it makes sense for you.
Yeah, it's got to be downloadable on the MMA website at this point, or reach out to, like you said, either you or I personally, and we'll get it to you. Yep.
Yeah. So I would be remiss with all the hype and promise around it if I didn't bring up AI. Greg, particularly when we're talking about things like personalization and first-party data and insights. There's a role for AI, not just in like what a lot of people see around generative AI and content. There's a lot of different things you can do with AI in the customer experience. I know this is an area that MMA Global has been very active with AI, some foundational research and some stuff that's in the field now around generative AI. Where do you see the puck is today on AI, and where do you think it's going?
Yeah, listen, I'm of the camp is it's the most important thing that's going to happen this decade. And I put that in the same platform as what the personal computer meant in essence, the 80s, the internet in the 90s, and mobile in the early 2000s into the teens, right? AI is the big deal. And I think most of the people that I listen to seem to agree that it is transformational beyond or crazes of expectations. You even just take about where you are on your mobile phone today. It's, I think, the experience we all have, right? And the way that which an Uber through mobile has reset my expectations. Like, I want to know what the driver is. I want to know how fast they're going to get there. And I want to be able to track their performance. And I want that to be a seamless, trusting experience. And that's only made possible by the power that mobile became for us, right? So I think we'll see similar things sort of obviously coming out of AI now. It's all going to be rooted there. Yeah, I'm a huge believer.
Do you think that AI, is in marketing? Do you see it more as augmenting and providing, additional data and analytics, or do you see it as replacing or a bit of both, certain aspects of the experience, like, for example, creating content, creating interactions with people that are powered by a bot. Like, how far can we push this versus it's more in the background as supporting and providing insights and tools?
Yeah, I don't know if I know enough to kind of comment on sort of in the background, but I do, my thesis is sort of unproven. You can tell I like to sort of try to focus on stuff that we can prove, But I think unproven is that advertising, the challenge that advertising in particular has had is that it, because it's so unpersonalized, every time an ad gets served, it teaches me to ignore advertising. That's really true, I think, in what has been linear television, which maybe is getting a little old school now. But I think it's true on internet too. Just the ads, they're not relevant. They're not personalized. They don't matter to me. So of course I don't pay attention. They're teaching me to ignore them. How insane that that's the business that we run. So I think from a messaging perspective, we have the opportunity to be more personalized. I think when it comes then to actual experiences, I want you to know who I am. I think Apple's doing a pretty good job. As I take a city bike to work, and so obviously the app that comes up, this is pretty simple. It's not really that AI driven, but the app that comes up first on my bar of apps to pick in the morning is City Bike, right? So like they've learned my behavior. They're making it easy for me rather than have to go search around. And my guess is that we've only just begun. And I think that at the end of the day, as much as we have a bunch of dynamics that we'll have to be very careful around, privacy and consumers' understanding and appreciation for what marketers are doing, that we respect that and be careful to manage regulatory activity around that, obviously. I think consumers are begging us to make everything much more personal.
What you're highlighting is with personalization, is AI is enabling next best content, next best action with much more data and at scale with ongoing testing and learning. That's using AI. And what a lot of has happened in advertising, where there's advertising inventory, which is just a piece of ad and a piece of content and a point in time that gets shown to somebody. That's when we talk about advertising inventory. You can optimize the insertion of the inventory with AI. The same is now true of content and experiences, that we can use data to insert content, that we can thin slice it, and we can experiment and test what content do we serve up to whom, when, based on what data trigger. And that's what AI is doing. It's allowing journey orchestration and experimentation at scale. It helps you build insights, and it helps you tailor things that drive action.
Well, and Matt, I think at some level too, and you're right, I tend to think of it from an advertising. Advertising is a very big expenditure, so there's just a lot of room for improvement there. But I suspect that some of the consumer value is going to come when we start to personalize in-store experiences, or the dreaded chatbot. What's the worst thing that happens to you today when they push you over to a chatbot that you can tell is not run by a human being? Or at least I think it's not run by a human being, I guess. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on some of them. I've been told that some people think they've really figured that out. But it's like, you don't need to go out of your way to annoy me and waste my time. You really, we have a responsibility as marketers to be better than that. And I see a lot of them doing that. I had one of the QSRs tell me, and listen, this is how complex that is, though. Let's not think that my statements there kind of a little bit oversimplified, but look at the complexity we're up against. It's back to what I started with these new forces that are changing. So I had a QSR tell me, quick service restaurant, tell me, just about a year and a half ago. They said, Greg, we used to have 4 personas, cash at counter, credit at counter, cash at drive-in, credit at drive-in. Those were the 4 personas. They go, we have 28 now. 28 ways that a consumer, whether it be through Uber Eats or DoorDash, a billion of other, I'm sure there's a myriad of other things that are going on there that I couldn't even listen to. But that's an incredible complexity. So I think we're setting up the infrastructure. Are we good at it? But something's got to make that work. And I suspect at the end of the day that the answer is going to come around AI and its ability to sort of be able to sort of think for a human being faster.
I'm going to bring it back to what we were talking about with the movable, mutable, and propensity. and the both and, tie it all together. Personas, you used that a moment ago, those are often were used to be more creative driven exercises and insights driven exercises. Who am I designing the ad for? Who am I designing the product for? Who am I designing the experience for? And then there was a disconnect between that and actual execution with segmentation. And now what we're seeing is the ability to create microsegments in data where you can go, like if you have 500 versions of your retail circular, it's equivalent to personalizing it. You have you're serving up many versions. At some point, you don't need a millionth version of something to generate the same effects. And now what we're seeing is the ability to use data to microsegment our personas and have both creativity and analytics working together.
Right. We didn't have channels that could do it. And, let's face it, it's the mobile phone that made all that possible for us. Now we all carry personalized devices with us all the time. That was the first step. That's how all this stuff builds on it. And we needed an extreme understanding, generally driven through data, right, of what's going on. Although I will say, just by the way, I know we get kind of nervous about the personalized data, and I don't ever want to sort of diminish that. And in particular, especially given a variety of consumers doing it. You know what we did a series of cross-media studies looking at different channels and data and how they perform. We did 13 studies with major brands, Walmart, Coca-Cola, others. And we did it over a period of about 4 years. You know what the single greatest driver of performance was? The biggest performance, the one element of data that we could bring in, or of understanding that was that we'd see just extraordinary high performance, it was location. And we saw it again. And by the way, that study was true for when they had location as part. But even when location, like we did it for insurance, we found with Allstate, we found that location was a single driver, greater driver. And what Allstate insurance, what does that have to do with location? So even when location was not a part of the business per se, is a single greatest driver of performance. It just means we just need to know at some level a little bit more than we do now. And then respect the consumer and try to personalize against that. Yeah, such a big deal.
So just to, I guess to close this out here, if you had to give one piece of advice to a marketer that wants to kind of take it to the next level, to kind of what do you think that marketers need to do more of than they're doing today? Where do they need to focus their time and their energy?
Okay. Well, listen, my answer is obviously get involved with the MMA. I mean, that would be sort of listen, join us. Listen, here's the struggle. Your agency's not doing the forward thought leadership. Consultants are smart, and they will do it, but they're not here to propagate change in an industry. It's a different dynamic. They share, but not in the way that MMA does. So I really am continue to believe very strongly in the mission that an industry body like the MMA, who's got no axe to grind. I work for CMOs. That's my whole bread and butter of this thing, is to service them. And that there's just so much change. You need to learn from each other. Because even when you do your own innovation research or innovation projects within your company, you never really know, was that an anomaly or was that in par with other patterns? So we can create pattern recognition, which we didn't get into it today, but we've done this consortium for AI personalization. We told marketers we expected a 30 to 60% gain. We've seen gains of plus, here's the stats. Plus 259% was the first study, which is insane. That was insane. The second study was plus 137% in marketing performance against the digital KPI. By the way, the last study was 0%. We've not talked about that publicly, but one failed completely. There's as much good learning in a study that fails as there is in studies that do well. So, I'm a big believer. Matt, your question though, back to kind of your question, like, where to place bets, and I don't know. There's so many kind of opportunities. I guess it would depend on. I love what you're doing around the customer experience maturity model, right? And we'll build that into a tool that marketers can benchmark themselves. Because sometimes you just need both a heat map of where others think the puck is going, and where you're deficient. That's, I think, a big help. And we have a marketing attribute. Do we have a marketing attribute? Did we build an MTA tool? We didn't do. No, we did we have a privacy tool, benchmarking tool.
There's a data maturity tool. I can't remember
all of MMA's tools. What else do I have?
The data maturity tool, I think.
The data maturity tool. I'm sorry, that was the one that we did with EY, which was really great. Exactly. Yeah, I'm sorry, that was the one I was trying to think of. Yeah, so we got a bunch of these, and we'll build up more tools to help marketers make better decisions more quickly and set their priorities. We also have a thing around marketing measurement quality score tool, which allows you to figure out where you're weak in measurement, which is I'm really excited about that. So I think it's kind of a personalized solution. I mean, if you're asking me overarching, then I think you and I would both agree AI is the future, and that's going to be the driver of customer experience into the future. So that's I don't know, Matt. You're nodding your head. You think, yeah, you agree? Is that what the future is going to be?
I've written a little about this recently. I did a blog series on AI and CX. So it's there's a lot out there, and there's a lot of opportunities to drive value through this.
Yeah, exactly. And I think consumers are begging us because they're irritated with companies. They're tired of us wasting their time or not respecting who they are, or we've got to create listen, it's a good news, bad news. The bad news is there's a lot of room for improvement. The good news is there's a lot of room for improvement.
So thank you so much, Greg. It's been a fun discussion as always to talk about where marketing's going and how we can move the industry forward together. Yeah. There's a lot of things that the members in this audience who are CX leaders who want to drive value at their companies and be leaders to move forward the practice of marketing and customer experience, they can do with your organization. So I would encourage them to reach out and learn more, and happy to discuss what's going on at MMA Global, and we look forward to seeing you at events and having conversations and moving the industry forward together.
Say, man, appreciate all your help too and stuff. You've been you are the center of where the MMA is going, where marketers need to go. So we appreciate your support and collaboration. Thank you.
I would encourage the audience again to check out Greg's podcast, Building Better CMOs. Or you can email him at greg@mmaglobal.com or myself at matt@mmaglobal.com. Do join in the conversation, and please be sure to follow us. And I hope this sparks some great ideas for you all. Please stay tuned for more.